piece I don't have. I didn't. In the Walkpoint Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. Broadcast live on local cable channel 8 and 1072. Streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website, www.mashpeema.gov/channel 8. 5 p.m., convene meeting in open session. And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd like a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Wayne, do you have an extra? Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And we will start off with the classification hearing and the Director of our Assessing, Joseph Gibbons.
Good evening.
Oh, I'm sorry. She needs to read the
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
public hearing notice. I'm sorry.
Under Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983, the Select Board will conduct a public hearing on whether the town of Mashpee should implement the Classification Act. At said hearing, the Mashpee Select Board will hear testimony as to what will be the fiscal year 2025 residential factor, which will determine the share of taxes each classification of property will pay, what will be open space factor, and whether there will be a residential exemption and/or a small business exemption. Said public hearing will be conducted on Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, at 5 p.m. in the McCoy Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. You can submit comments and questions via email to select@mashpeemass.gov prior to the meeting date and time.
Thank you. And we do have a few letters in your packet. Okay, Mr. Gibbons.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Is Vice Chair Whedon on? I thought he was going to be zooming in.
I am.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure he was there, that's all.
Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Good evening. I'm going to hand off to Chairman of the Board of Assessors, Paul Andrews, for a quick summary.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good to see everybody. So this is just a little housekeeping. We were wondering, the sample motion that we provided you on the Assessors Board, we were recommending that we separate these motions into two. The first being everything but the residential exemption, because we seem to agree on that portion of the motion, and then perhaps after that, discussion on the residential exemption itself, if that's okay.
So do two separate motions.
Yeah, so basically,
One for the factor of one.
So stop at the and.
stop at the last and just put a period there, exactly.
Okay.
Madam Chair, would we exercise the motion now or during the, or
Oh.
that would be after the hearing?
After the hearing.
If anyone wants to discuss that portion, like, I don't know if anyone does. Yeah.
We could get that out of the way now if you want to do that, and then get into the residential exemption and that, or...
Okay.
During the hearing, or do we do it after the post?
I can just like recap that portion of the motion for the audience.
Okay.
Yeah. So, excluding the residential exemption topic at the moment, we would be looking for the Select Board to adopt a residential factor of 1, meaning no shifting of any residential burden to commercial, basically not splitting the tax rate there. To not adopt an open space discount, and to not adopt a small commercial exemption. And those typically are pretty standard every year that we recommend. And that would be the one motion, and then split the residential exemption into a different motion.
Okay.
Would you like,
So you want us to do that portion first now, or do you?
Yeah, unless there was anyone behind me that wanted to talk about that boring stuff.
Those other issues they're not really pertinent to Mashpee.
Yeah.
They don't make sense for Mashpee,
Yeah.
and Mashpee's never adopted
I
or
understand
considered any
the
of
adopt to
others.
open space discount and to adopt a small commercial exemption. Those.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay?
right, so Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the town of Mashpee adopt a factor of 1 for all classes of property with no discount for open space, no small commercial exemption.
I'll second that motion.
David? No,
No discussion. Are you
it's
calling
just,
the
dis-
vote?
oh, we were going to call for, so we don't need to call for a vote until later. We've already called for the hearing to open.
We already opened the public hearing.
Not yet, because we just started with the first comment.
I have no discussion at this time on that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
Not on that
Okay.
motion.
Okay, so I've never done the motion before, like this before.
You mean
You have
split?
a first and second, you just call the vote.
I know,
if
but
there's
we've
no
never
discussion.
done,
But we're in the public comment, so
all right.
we could ask if there's any
Any
discussion.
concerns or discussions from the audience on this portion,
You- Right, in regards to that
in
portion.
regards to this portion?
Okay.
None being said, we can close.
No,
Nope.
we just had to call the vote.
Okay, call the vote. Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
David?
Yes,
And I'm a yes. Thank
Thank you
you.
for that.
It was a little confusing.
Yeah. We got through it together, thank you.
Okay, next.
Good evening again. Before I get into the classification here, a primer regarding
A little louder.
the residential exemption, before we get into that, I'd just like to thank the other town departments for their assistance with everything the past year. Setting of the tax rate, which will be done after the Board of Selectmen vote on the residential exemption. We'll submit that into Boston, and the DOR will go through the paperwork, and the assessors will then set the tax rate. It's a year-long process. I want to thank the Select Board, the Town Manager's Office, the Finance team, and especially the Building Department and other departments that assisted us during the year so that we can get everything approved. This is a team effort, and we're kind of the face of the franchise with regard to the tax rate, but it's really a cumulative effort of a lot of town departments.
Thank you.
Okay. The primer that's up there, we've gone through this the last couple years. I'm just going to focus very briefly, review the residential exemption. Before the tax rate can be set, the selectmen must hold this public hearing each year to consider the tax rate options available to Mashpee under property tax classification. Notice of the hearing must comply with the open meeting law. It's been advertised in the newspaper. As I said before, assessors set tax rates. The role of the selectmen. The selectmen conduct this classification hearing and vote on the available tax rate options. Tax policy is not set by the Board of Assessors. The Select Board deals with the tax policy options. Cities and towns have several options in distributing the tax levy among the taxpayers under property tax classification. Use of these options results in multiple tax rates for different property classes, and they change the components used to calculate the rate, i.e. the amount of the tax levy being paid by or the assessed valuation of the class. The total tax levy remains the same. It's just shifted within the class, and especially with the residential exemption, it's a shift between the residential class and only the residential class. We've already adopted the single rate of 1, which means we're not shifting the burden from the commercial or industrial or personal property classes to the residential class. So we will not have a split tax rate. Mashpee's never had a split tax rate. Okay, down to residential exemption. The selectmen may grant a residential exemption to all Class 1 residential properties that are the principal residence of the taxpayer on January 1 of the prior year. The only validation for proof of residence provided by law is a copy of a residence tax return. The exemption may not exceed 35% of the average assessed value of all Class 1 residential properties. And for this year, that is $835,600. I did want to just briefly add, you can't do a fractional tax rate in Massachusetts. And there was one Cape Cod community that recently adopted a residential exemption and used a 22.5% vote. And I don't know what's happening with that. They may have to revote that because they didn't use a whole number. So we're just giving you a heads up. If you choose,
Don't get fancy.
if you choose, someone likes 22 and someone likes 23 and you want to split the difference, you can't do it. You got to pick 22 or 23. So impact on the tax rate. Adopting a residential exemption increases the residential tax rate. The amount of the tax levy paid by the class remains the same, but because of the exempted valuation, it is distributed over less value. The higher rate creates a shift within the class that reduces the tax paid by the homeowners with moderately valued properties. The exempted taxes are paid for by the owners of rental properties, owners of second homes, and full-time residents with higher valued homes, and also by people that are domiciliaries that don't file for the residential exemption.
Right.
And we have a lot of those. And I'll get into that. We have 2,512 people that have been approved for this year. We have roughly 5,000 when we run the zip code report that may be eligible. But they either choose not to file, or they don't know about it, or whatnot. Now I'm going to fast forward.
Can I ask you one
Yeah.
question right at this point when you're talking about that? We have people in town that rent year-round homes,
Yeah.
but don't live there, but they rent them at a reasonable rate, affordable to other people. They don't, or do they? They don't.
They would not qualify
Do not
for the
qualify.
residential exemption,
Okay.
as it's currently,
Potentially, the tax
Okay.
would go up on that domicile.
yes.
Potentially, the tax would go up on that domicile because the burden is shifted.
Okay. I thought that. I just wanted to clarify.
And with the proposals, you know, with the 5% shift the last 2 years, we've had about a 7-cent difference between the two residential rates.
Okay.
Okay. Just give a brief overview of our valuation and where we stand. Our LA 15 was approved by the Department of Revenue. It's an interim year valuation. It's not a complete revaluation. But we used calendar 23 year sales for the fiscal 25 values. And as you see there, we've gone up from $899,503 to $977,974.
Wow.
And that 8.72% increase, I do have some good news. The existing values from last year to this year increased 6.8%. That 8.72 is all properties. So that that adds in new construction and properties with additions. So existing properties last year that nothing happened, no changes, to the next year, we're up 6.8%, which is considerably lower than the last couple years where we were 16.76 and 20.10 and 13.94 during those post-COVID or COVID years. And the way things are headed, looking at the 24 sales for fiscal '26, you know, we're probably going to break $1 million next year in Mashpee for our average. We'll be over $1 million next year for our average value.
Household? Household?
Yeah, single family. Yeah. Okay. The next page is the residential exemption. I went through that with you. There's 2,512 of those now. I wanted the board to just keep in mind, depending on what option they select, this number is very fluid, and people have till April 1st to apply. And those monies come out of the overlay. Also, talking to the statistician at the DOR, James Paquette, he's reviewed other towns that have adopted the residential exemption, and if you jump it up, you know, a number of slots, all of a sudden, you're more apt to get more people coming in this year. Obviously, because there's more money on the table. Okay, Mashpee new growth, I had mentioned construction. A little bit down this year from the last few years. If you look at the value increases, we peaked at 106 million in calendar year '22 for fiscal '24. This year, we went down a little bit, $100 million of increase in construction and additions and whatnot. So the tax dollar that's added to the levy under Proposition 2.5 in Mashpee for this tax rate that we're going to set, $628,812. It's still substantial, and it's in the ballpark of the range for the last 10 years, but it's a little bit down from the last 3 or 4 years.
Madam Chair. So just to clarify, that's 628,000, that's new tax growth. That's new tax dollars coming into the community?
Yes.
Okay,
So that's added to our levy.
right.
We did have a bit, just looking forward so everyone can understand, in calendar '24, which will show up in fiscal '26, we did have about 3 months this summer where there were next to no new building permits issued for new construction. And I'm a little concerned about that with regard to growth. So we may have to temper our estimate a little bit for fiscal '26. And that's out of our hands. We have no control over that. Whatever the values of the permits that come in, we go out and look and see where they are in construction. And if it's down a little bit, we have to temper back our estimate. Okay, now to get to the nuts and bolts and the comparison for the residential exemption, why we're really here tonight to discuss the different options, the different percentages.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank Kathy Camo, my assistant. She put together this page. She contacted all the municipalities on this sheet to get the most current numbers and percentages for all these towns, and there's a few Cape and Islands towns on there. This is for fiscal '24. We didn't ask for fiscal '25 because there's only been a couple that have set '25, and we didn't want to have some '24s and some '25s. So they're all fiscal '24 numbers up here. Of note, Barnstable, which has had this since 2006, They've had it, going on 20 years. They did increase theirs from 20. It had been 20 for a while. They're now 25. But they've had it for almost 20 years. I believe Wellfleet increased theirs as well. So that's a good piece of information to look at for comparison. And now we get to the different options, the summary on the different options.
Sure.
So
We could,
just to clarify on that last sheet,
Yeah.
again, those are the listing in that sheet was the only towns that have the tax, the
The whole
exemption.
state.
In the whole state.
These are the only towns
wow.
in fiscal '24. Yes.
I found that a little bit shocking, but, okay, you just answered my question.
Yeah, that,
Mashpee's on the cutting edge.
and this is,
Four towns
this
on
has
the
been
case.
law for 40 years.
Right.
And there's still only 17 or so communities out of 351 that adopt this, because there are only so many towns that it really can help.
Right. Okay, thank you.
It's not like Louisiana, where they give everybody the first 100,000 exempt, if it's your domicile, statewide. Different states have different tax policies, and that's,
Madam Chair, if I may?
Sure.
I do believe that there is a movement and suggestions to be looking at towns like Mashpee, where we have a large summer population and residents are struggling, and home ownership has gone up and value's gone up consistently. So I do believe there's kind of a move to consider a tax exemption in towns that kind of fit that. I don't like to call us a resort community, but have some of the characteristics of a resort community. And I also believe that the governor is going to approve an even higher increase beyond the 35% for towns that have a very, very high summer population. So the trend seems to be moving in that direction for towns where having a lot of summer residents is driving up prices, and residents who are living in those towns are struggling.
I will add this, that the mayor of Boston has had some resistance in a similar area, not necessarily with the residential exemption, but with the factor of one on the shifting of the residential and commercial rate.
That's not part of this hearing, right?
No.
Okay, okay.
No,
thank you.
we're
Just
not.
clarity.
No, but I'm just saying.
Thank you.
It's related to tax policy. Okay, so here are our options. For comparison's sake, just because we adopted it before, and if anyone's tuning in now, the Board of Assessors made a recommendation on this to go no higher than 20%. And Paul can speak to that if there are any questions about that. So at 5%, we would be keeping a similar percentage as last year. That's one of the scenarios. That's the first one. I'll go through that. Our tax rate, our natural tax rate for this year would be $6.13. And with a 5% residential exemption, would be $6.20. The amount exempted on the tax bill would be $259.04. Last year, that was $242.51. So there'd be about a 17.
Are you okay, David? Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Didn't sound good.
So there'd be about a $17 increase if you adopted the same percentage, okay? And then we'll go to 20%, because the assessor said that was the maximum that they would recommend. Looking at that, that $6.13 rate would go to $6.42. And the exemption would be over $1,000. It'd be $1,072.91.
So, Joe, I'm sorry. Madam
Yeah.
Chair. Just to clarify, again, you're referencing $835,000 value house, correct? With all these,
Yes.
so the cost saving to residents would be the $259 at 5%, which is where we are now. And then hypothetically, the 10% would be the $524, correct? Reduction in residential.
The value of the residential exemption would be $259.04.
Correct.
Minus the 7 cents, because you're raising the tax rate
You're
from
raising the rate up.
613
620.
to 620.
Right, okay.
There's a little bit of marking it up to mark it down
Right.
there to
Yeah,
afford it.
Like if
yeah.
everyone had a Stop and Shop card, that's the comparison.
Right.
So just to interject from the assessor's point of view, there's two important components as you mull over what percentage, if any, you want to continue with. And the higher you go, two things, and if you were here last year, you heard me spouting about the overlay. We really do have to watch the overlay, because as the incentive goes up to file, the applications go up, the approvals go up, the overlay gets more exposed. So the assessor's board, basically, that's part of why we came to that 20%. But also the manpower. Right now, Joe and his department has been doing an amazing job of consuming and absorbing all of this extra work with no extra manpower. But the reality is that just can't continue. And so, without help. And so there is a component of needing some more help in that department to help administer the ongoing burden of these applications. So something to keep in mind as you think about it.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Could you explain more as to why you came up with the 20%? What was the thought process and the analysis that went into that?
Sure. It really had to do with how much exposure to the overlay could the town absorb. And even at the 20%, if you jump ahead to the potential overlay shortfalls in your packet, you can see at the 20% with maintaining an application of 1,500, we kind of have it. But then if we jump up to 2,500 applications, we're going to need to pad that overlay.
What if we did it slower?
That
What
would be
if we went
helpful
from 5
from an overlay standpoint.
I know, but what if
Yeah.
we did it from, like, say, 5 to 10,
Yeah.
and then got people on board and signed up, and then, again, another 5% the next year? Does that help your overlay?
Well, I think, yes, it would help the exposure of the overlay, but it also would help the department in gearing up, because there is a vacancy in that department, so now we're down even further. And then, to keep all that in context of wanting to give the residents this discount versus having to increase the tax levy because you have to now increase manpower,
Right.
and then the overlay.
I have a clarification question. How is the manpower different depending on the exemption? The process is the same, is it not?
I'll let you.
Yeah, the process is the same, but the higher you go up on this percentage at once, okay, the much more the likelihood that we're gonna get inundated with abatement applications. If you go from 5% to, let's say, the nuclear option, 35% in 1 year, okay? Number one, the overlay is gonna be decimated. We're gonna have a deficit situation. The town's gonna have
It's
to
asking
go.
about manpower.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but.
There's more paperwork.
There's more
People
paperwork.
coming to
There's
the,
more applications.
You're
That's
saying
what it-
applications.
you're connecting paperwork with the number of applications, not exactly the rate itself. I'm just for clarification.
Well, it's both. I mean,
I guess we're connecting the dots of incentive, the higher, creating that potential,
More applications.
right, and then the overlay of, yeah.
I have, oh, Thank you.
Could I ask a
Yes.
question? How many folks did you have come in the last time we went through this, when we went to 5?
The first year,
Yes,
2,109
2,100
and 9.
and 9.
Don't forget the 9, Ron.
Okay. After the Red Sox season, I try to forget about 9 innings.
Yeah.
And now we're at 2512. And
So,
What also-
so last year you only had 400 or 500 people come in over the course of the year?
additional people, that's correct, David.
It sounds like the bulk of them came in the first year. And then
Yes,
tapered off.
but I don't want to lose people, and the devil's in the detail in this. We have to, all the sales that come through during the year, okay, we have to go through all those and take people out, and then new people come in. So it's not like we only added 400. We took out, so many, and then we added
Right.
the new folks that purchased or filed. And what I think Paul's getting at is, the higher you jump up in the short run, the more demand in the department, the more work in the department, the more applications that have to be reviewed. And after 5 years, we have to revet we have to start over between year 6 and year 10 in order to get our tax rate certified.
It's a 10-year process,
Yes.
correct? No, I understand,
10
but I'm
years.
just, for
No, it's 10 years,
clarification.
but the way to mitigate that is to do it cyclically between year 6
Mm-hmm.
and year 10. So we're not loaded with all that paperwork in one year.
Understood. I'm still, quite frankly, not seeing the difference in what the exemptions set at and the amount of work in doing any of these things. I understand what you're saying, what Mr. Andrews has said with regard to if more applications come in. I think we all understand that. But that's truly the amount of extra work, is if more applications come in.
Plus the maintenance of it, because there's
Correct. Correct.
the ongoing, and then the long term.
Of the number of applications, correct?
Right, so, because during the year, as Joe said, if
Gotcha.
there's sales or other issues, you got to deal with that. And then the long term is the cyclical review.
Right.
That really should
But that
start
review
earlier.
occurs whether we're at 5% or at 35%. That review.
Right,
Thank you.
yep.
I guess for me, I have to call attention to the fact that in your data sheet, it reflects that in the past 10 years, home prices have essentially doubled, or more than doubled, to where in 2015, the average value was 460,974, and in 10 years, it's jumped to 977 and $974 for the average home. Those numbers are scary. Anybody that was struggling in 2015, how do you struggle to make ends meet when you're paying your assessed value of your home doubled in a 10-year period? Cost of living COLA increases is 2%. I just don't know. I sympathize with the people that have been here for a long time, and they have no control over their assessed value, which affects their tax rate. And we're incrementally giving them back $200 between year 1, year 2, and for me, I prefer going to the 20 as recommended, because at least now you're taking off $1,000 off of the tax bill. $1,000 to somebody struggling really makes a difference. $200, it helps, but it's not substantive if you're really struggling to make ends meet. You know, those numbers are scary. Your home ownership value just doubled. That also makes me think of, you know, just the affordability for people that are struggling to make ends meet. The potential for them buying a home, folks that grew up here and lived here for a long period of time, you know, your average cost of living has to be substantial to be able to go into a mortgage on a $977,000 house. Larger issues outside of the tax residential exemption discussion, but I just have to point out those numbers. They're troubling.
Since Select Board Member Whedon talked about the 20%, could we possibly look at those figures so the audience, the people who are here for the hearing can see them as well?
That's on the state class 101 sheet.
Yes. Yep, you provided us.
Not
Yeah.
new growth.
Thank you.
I think it's in front of that.
Yep, it's one more.
I think you're going the wrong way.
No, that's it.
There it is,
Yeah, that's.
20%.
That's the 20%. Which actually indicates that somebody who has a home for under $300,999 is getting that $993 savings.
Savings, yeah.
And at the same point, to me, this indicates that if we have people who are renting homes, who can't afford to buy homes, and who are struggling in Mashpee, most likely they're not renting homes that are in the $900,000 range. They're more likely to be renting homes that are probably closer to that $300,000 to $400,000 range or below. And the cost to them is, whereas the resident is saving $993.
Resident does not save.
The resident does. If it's a renter.
No, it's a rent.
If it's a renter, they.
Person
have to
who
pay.
owns
I
the
understand.
house.
No, I
If
understand.
he rents it, does not get
No,
the
I
exemption.
I understand that. So if we have somebody who is living in a home, who is a resident of that home, they're actually saving $993. If someone has rented that home, that same home, to a renter, the renter is paying, and I hate to charge anybody any more money, but the renter is paying an additional $76. So there's a huge amount of difference between.
Why would the renter
What
pay
are
only
you talking about?
76?
Because that's the increase in taxes.
No, no, no. The
Yes.
person who
They're gonna
owns the
pass it along,
home.
Carol. They're gonna pass it, the homeowner's gonna pass it along
Pass
to the tenant.
to their tenant, yes.
Right, and
I
if
agree
they,
with
if
that.
they pass it along, if you look over the red column where it says increase in taxes, the increase in taxes for that home that's being rented is $76. So the person who's living in a home and is getting the exemption
Yes.
is actually, who's struggling at that level, is getting almost $1,000 benefit. If I'm renting and the landlord is passing along the increase in taxes, what they're actually talking about is $76. So there's a huge differential between what we're talking about with an increase to renters if a landlord passes that around, and what we're talking about with savings to homeowners. I'm just reading the charts.
So, Joe, can you clarify? Because my understanding is if you're a landlord and you are renting it to somebody,
Yeah.
you can't qualify for the exemption.
Correct.
Correct?
Right.
Correct.
So your taxes, you're going to be on the side of, your taxes are going to go up.
Yes, $76 as compared to the other line where you're saving a resident almost $1,000.
Yeah, but,
$76 is
yeah,
what they're
but
going up.
you're picking the lowest,
Well,
lowest end. How many houses are probably in that range?
23.
There's
okay.
23.
So let's go to the next category,
I mean-
which is 300,000 to 400,000.
And you
And
know-
now we're looking, and the resident is saving $967. And the
$151 of them.
landlord is paying the landlord owner is paying an additional $104. So I think it's really important to look at those figures, especially near the top. If I'm struggling as a renter, I'm highly unlikely to be able to afford to rent a house that's valued at $700,000. I mean, not to say there aren't outliers, but I'm unlikely to. So we need to be looking at the numbers that are closest to the top.
But you're also passing it on to 581 people.
If they don't apply.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's,
So, exactly.
yeah, it's a huge difference. If I may, you know, we consistently talk about the need to provide housing that's affordable for full-time residents, many of whom are working in Mashpee and have worked here for many years. And to me, the residential tax exemption is just one tool in a limited toolbox. I really like to share some data, because I think when we look at the data, it brings home the need in Mashpee. When I was doing research for the CDBG grant, there were data points that I would like to share, and there are not a lot of them, but I think it's really important to hear them. So when we're talking about helping people who are living here and who are working here, 40% of Mashpee's homeowners have earnings that would qualify them for affordable housing, a full 40%. 68% of these people have housing issues such as incomplete kitchen facilities, incomplete plumbing facilities, crowded conditions, and they pay more than 30% of their income for housing. More than 50% of students who go to school in Mashpee qualify for free lunch. And 50% is the increase in elderly homelessness in the past 5 years. I really think we need to use every tool we have in our toolbox. We sat here at a meeting a few weeks ago, and I think it was John who said, we either believe in affordable housing or we don't. I would suggest we either believe in giving people at the lower end who definitely need a break, that break, or we don't. The savings to taxpayers who are residents is huge. Until you get down to people who own homes for more than $3 million, their extra that they're paying is not that significant. And not that I want anybody to pay any more, but I think that if we're looking at the general population in Mashpee and we want to keep people here, we want to help them to live here, I think $993 a year would go a long way in helping people save that money, maybe to buy extra groceries, to buy school supplies for their kids, or to pay their electric bill.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, and I would love to hear from the public as well, but Michaela, I understand what you're saying, and you know, I can't argue what you said as far as factual, but there's other implications, and a couple things bring me to pause about the whole tax exemption, and we went to the 5% to almost kick the tires, if you will, to kind of see what the effects of on the community. The fact that there's 15, that's called maybe 15, 20, less than 20 in the entire state that has instituted a tax exemption, you know, for residential exemption, that's shocking. But there's also effects. I've heard from a lot of seniors that are living in a house, maybe widowed, in a big old house, and their taxes are potentially they're a little crazy right now. So I understand there's renters across the board, there's renters that they are going to be affected. And, you know, there are people, and just because they're not primary residents, if we go up a notch, that could increase the applications. If we go up too much, I think it's going to be like a bell rung in Mashpee to say, okay, if you're not primary residents, maybe you'll consider switching over. And now the impact is even going to be, it could change the whole matrix. And again, I think we also have some major financial burdens coming down the road. So I still believe if we do it, moderately increase this tax exemption to give some relief, at the same time, there is going to be a burden of taxes when we talk about a new police station coming down the road, a DPW that needs some major renovations. We need a phase 2 wastewater, which then who knows would be phase 3 and all that coming up down the road. If we go down this road of using all the tax exemption available funds and any tax relief now, what are we going to do in 2-3 years from now if we're already at 30-35%? And it's true. Could they raise it to 50%? I've heard that same thing. That's possible. But if we do it now, you know, where are we going to be in 2 years from now when we can't go to this tax relief? We can't provide it at that point. So that's.
And I would suggest that if we have people who are struggling and we can provide relief now, that we don't save it up so we can provide it later. I hear what you said, but. With regard to renters, and I'm sorry, but I spent a lot of time looking at different data points, and we had an HPP put together, and I think there was a lot of disagreement about the implementation of it, but there was no disagreement with regard to the data provided. And according to that document, most of Mashpee's multifamily rental housing is affordable housing. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about rentals, we're talking about a much smaller population than we are when we're talking about people who own their homes who are struggling. So most, they categorize that, and then they go through and they name each one of the housing developments, which I don't need to do right now. But they were very clear that most of our multifamily rentals are affordable, or classified as affordable.
Okay. I'm going to open it up. Yep. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the public for questions. And who wants to go first? Karen?
I have.
Use a microphone.
Pardon me?
Use a microphone. A microphone.
Karen, did you want? I have some information. Want me to stand over here? Yeah, I want you to have a seat. Have a seat. That I think can help simplify it. At least I think so. Mr. Gibbons, I use these charts to, and these are the correct charts.
Karen,
Okay. Karen, we have plenty of charts.
We have them.
Just give them to Wayne and he can.
Thank you for letting me speak. Good evening, Select Board, Town Manager Collins, Assistant Town Manager Taylor. I'm speaking as a private citizen. Use the mic. Is it on? Okay. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of the Planning Board. The sheet that I'm passing out to the board is a different format that I used. I'll let you see this, Mr. Gibbons. I looked at the houses from 480 houses that are valued between 401 to 509.99, and I continued. There are 480 of those. 631 houses from 501 to 699. 365 from 601 to 799, and 252 at 701,000 value property to 899. This comprises 69% of all qualified homeowners, taxpayers. And you can just check it out by adding those numbers together, which is 1728, put it over 2512, which is the number of qualified, and you get 69%. So that's a big number. So I didn't go to where you went, Michaela. I just looked at where the bulk of the houses are, and I just picked those 4 places. you see what the savings are to these people on a 480, a 401,000 to 500 house. All they're saving at 5% is $227.
But we're
Those-
talking about 20% now.
I'm going through the list.
Okay.
This is the new 5%. I'm right at the top there, Carol.
Okay.
The additional tax on that house, or one of those houses, is $30. That's what the unqualified person would pay.
Right.
And when I say unqualified, we're saying the person who's a part-time occupier, owner of the house, or rents his house part-time, or has land. These are all unqualified tax exemption people. At 10%, using the same priced houses, the qualified person, meaning the Class 1 owner-occupied, saves $455. The additional tax, $68. Chicken feed at this point, I would say. Going down to the 252 at the 10%, the savings to the qualified is $413. First of all, saving $200 on 5% is a waste. It's ridiculous. $200 could be a vet bill or a car repair bill. It's gone, gone with the wind. At 15%, now it's getting up there a little bit. On those houses, the savings is between $694 and $654, $632. The additional tax on those properties,
It's 90.
$120, $148, $164. Not a burden
No.
to an unqualified. When we get to the 20%, which is what you were talking about, these same houses, which encompass 69% of all qualified, the first person on 401 to 500,000 saves $939. Now, it's not great, but it's getting there. It's a help, as you say. Could pay for some school books, could pay for lunches, maybe some transportation. And that additional cost is only $125. So let's just forget about the 5%. That's not even, worth thinking about. If we look at, as you said, Michaela, and I'll take you, the communities that adopt these residential tax exemptions are resort communities, seasonal housing. I know we don't like to say this is a resort, but, with the seasonal housing, it's sort of a resort, somewhat. Or or the other towns are those that have a lot of apartments or rental units, okay? We fit in the category of seasonal resort property. Is it correct that the assessor has, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, has recommended 20% exemption? Up to,
Not to
okay, thank you for clarifying. So a savings of $800 or $900 at the 20% would be quite a help to these people who really need a break. Versus the de minimis amount at these lower rates, at these lower percentages. So I would ask that you approve the 20%. Now, some of you may say, shifting the tax burden on the part-time residents or the landowners or the property owners who rent, that would be unfair. I see your side on that. I think it's fair to say that many of the part-time owners, the house that they're part-time of, are second homes. These people at these other ends that we're talking about can barely afford one house, much less two houses. The person who rents her house can earn additional income by renting, could maybe make $2,000 a week in the season to kill that overburden there, if you see it as a burden. Compare this to these qualified people who have a hard time paying the mortgage on their one and only house. John, Carol, This is your opportunity to embrace the residents here who may be living on a limited fixed income or living paycheck to paycheck, as many are. They will thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else would like to speak?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Ralph Herbst, and I'm a 30-year resident of Falmouth. I do have a property here in Mashpee. The way I understand the way this exemption works is that the higher the exemption, the more I will be affected and probably have to pay more. Disproportionately, I might add. I don't rent my property, and so if I did rent my property, I would not object to a fee or some kind of a tax for a rental property. I do not do that. I improved my property by myself, and I purchased all of the materials to do that in the town of Mashpee. I helped Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod build 5 homes here in Mashpee. I wonder if any of you have ever volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. Congratulations. It's a great organization. The residents on our road maintain our own road. It is not paved, and it is does not create any expense for the town unless it snows and it's too much for a contractor to handle. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to make those points. This is something that of course I never anticipated, coming here and talking about taxes. I don't have problems with taxes if I'm getting my my benefit for my taxes. People like myself don't have any children in your school system, and as you know, town budgets, the number 1 expense is education. The number 2 is DPW. So as a non-resident living on a dirt, or having a property on a dirt road, I'm not increasing my burden on the town to accommodate me in any way. So I would appreciate it if you would consider the people like myself, don't have any children, don't rent. I am not going to get up and dance to that music. Anyway, I hope you, I don't know, maybe I will. No, anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I hope you give us, people like myself, as much consideration as possible.
I thank you for your comments, sir.
Hi. I've been sitting here listening to this.
Name and
Oh,
address.
Yvonne Courtney.
And address.
And Prestwick Lane, Mashpee. I've been paying taxes to this town going back to the early 70s for a resident, earlier in property. So there are many people here in this town who have lived here for many years. When people say paying taxes, we have paid taxes for many years in this town. And we want some consideration. This town, if you look at the complex of this town, the majority of the people do not live here year-round. They can afford to move to other places where the cost of living is less. The people here who are elderly on fixed income have had to face the major increase in property, increase in taxes. Those people do not get an income to match that. It's only a small portion of the people in town that we are considering. The majority of the people do not live here year-round. So just look at the people who have contributed to this town all these years. They volunteer for offices. They go to the meetings. They vote. They take care of the town where people go off. We are left maintaining the town so that the value of this property has increased over the year due to the people who have lived here year-round for so many years. It is time to consider those people, not the renters, the people who have contributed to this town. They have paid their dues. They take care of the town. It's time that you think about those people who are on fixed income. The value of the property has gone up. One of the things that annoys me a great deal is to talk about the extra workload. We've all worked for many, many years. We've all had to take on extra work. There are many towns, many offices in this town where people are overworked and need more help. They don't come before the board complaining about the extra work. They don't complain about the consideration. If you're working in a job, you're getting paid to do a job. I'm a taxpayer. I pay my taxes. It is time that we consider the taxpayers in this town. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Phillips. I live on Whaler Road on a Shumet Pond. I wrote the
Yes, you did.
Select Board members a letter, but I would like to make a couple of points after listening today. I am a resident. I would only benefit from this, but fundamentally, I find it wrong to tax people that don't use the services more. And my main concern is the secondary effects of encouraging people to reside here full-time versus remain as secondary residents. I live on a Shumet Pond. It is contaminated with cyanobacteria, and I thank you all for encouraging and helping us get an alum treatment that now won't happen for another 2 years. But what this will mean to our pond is that those that own homes, if the rate goes up suddenly, okay, like Ralph is on this pond, those that own homes, and a lot of them are multi-generational homes, their parents were never rich, but you could buy a home on the Cape for dirt cheap. And these are camps. These are homes that look like big sheds. Okay, maybe it's time for them to give them up. So they give up their home because they no longer can afford it. So your assumption that everybody is rich when they have a second home is not true. They can no longer afford it, and we're seeing that happen. What happens? Another out-of-towner comes in, rips down the home, puts in a McMansion, and now guess what? Our septic is flowing straight into our groundwater that's already contaminated enough. We shouldn't be encouraging more residents. Those that work elsewhere and have come here during COVID continue to come more year-round. Another friend at the pond who's considering retiring and selling his home in Connecticut is saying, I'm going to do it sooner. I love them, but we don't have the infrastructure to support it. That's the main problem there. I also want to say, I don't think the assessor's office and this guy here are lazy by saying it's going to require more staffing. What they're pointing out to everybody is this is going to cost the town more, everybody more. And your responsibility is trying to keep the tax burden down. The taxes for everybody goes up. Now, he started this meeting with 3,000 participants that aren't in the system that could be. That means more than 3,000 would apply. He's going to get inundated with probably 3,500 if word gets out. Because I'll tell you, I walk around my neighborhood and I ask people, do they know about this? And they have no idea, residents or non-residents. If he gets inundated with a sudden increase of this, yeah, they're going to need more staff, and we all pay more. Shame on us for letting our tax burden rate go up. You're scaring us by showing numbers that our property values have doubled, tripled in the last few years. But congratulations to these same guys who lower the tax rate accordingly, so your payment only goes up a little. So by just showing the tax value, you're presuming you're doubling your tax burden. You're not. So there's some misinformation in the way it's presented, and I just wanted to point that all out. And the fact that I didn't notice earlier in your documentation that, Michaela, you pointed out wonderfully, that, wow, the resident gets a big benefit and the non-residents pay little. That's because there's way more people in the non-resident pool than the resident pool. And when we find out, oh, you get 35% off maybe, all those people apply, guess where the shift goes? Now all that non-resident value that you say, oh, it's only $60, they don't care. Suddenly that's tripling, quadrupling, and they do care. And that money does get added to the renter burden. So, and I should also point out, you're only talking about rental houses. This also affects rental apartments, and we have a lot of those. So, if anybody wants a copy of my full letter, I will supply it, but thank you for your consideration. I understand that there are people in town that need help. I'm not saying they don't, but you know, the basis for what I'm saying is that, you know, the pollution, not all people are rich. Consider the other factors here and don't go crazy with raising this up to as high as you can. They're not prepared for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Arden Russell, 32 Sturgis Lane. If we learned anything from yesterday's election, it's the economy. People all over the country clearly are struggling to make ends meet. This is a tool that has clearly been pointed out over and over again tonight that can help our lower income residents. Saving that benefit for some future date is not helpful at all. Putting that money in everybody's pocket now is what's helpful. We have a lot of people who have already hooked up to sewer and another bunch coming on soon. They all have real expenses, real additional expenses associated with that, where this would help to mitigate that. As for these mysterious renters that seem to be so important, we know that there's a potential solution for that. We've talked about it since we started talking about the residential exemption. I had a long conversation at a local comprehensive plan workshop around it. There's a solution. Has anybody pursued that solution for the renters in the last 2 years since we've adopted that, to mitigate that? No, we haven't. So if we're so worried about the renters, let's petition the legislature to add year-round rentals to the residential exemption, and then that problem goes away. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Of course. Mary?
Sheesh, Michael. Hi, my name is Mary Wagan, and I live at 35 Shumet Road in Mashpee. And for several years, I've spoken in front of you in favor of this. I think I've been the most consistent person giving testimony on this for years. And I am still in favor of a robust residential tax exemption here in Mashpee. Mashpee is the perfect community for a residential tax exemption. Why? Because roughly 30% of our housing stock is used seasonally. 70% is used year-round. So this mix is the perfect combination so that year-round residents will feel that difference. Well, there's 17, if I'm correct, you said there were 17 municipalities that do this?
Yeah, I believe
Right?
so.
So that's 5% of our municipalities statewide use this program. But on the Cape, where we have this seasonal and year-round mix, it's much higher. There are 5 communities on the Cape, we have 15 towns. That means 30% of our communities on the Cape have embraced this program. Barnstable, P-Town, Truro, Wellfleet, and Mashpee. The rates are Barnstable, 25%, P-Town, 35%, Truro, 30%, Wellfleet, 30%, and Mashpee, 5%. It's vitally important to have a robust program that's noticeable, such as a 20%. It creates affordable year-round living here. And now is the time, as we have expenses coming up with sewering and wastewater infrastructure and other overrides, but also because we have a robust improvement program for this town. Many people know that the town was awarded up to almost $500,000 to do a home ownership repair program through a community development block grant from the state and then ultimately from US HUD. Also, we have a robust community preservation program that helps our community improve by protecting our historic resources, by open space, provide recreational opportunities, and affordable housing. And because we got our game on, people are going to come and be attracted to Mashpee. That's one of the reasons why our housing prices are going up. This is a place to live. And the people who are initiating these great changes are your existing residents. So you need a way to keep the existing residents who have supported all of your ideas to make this place a better place. You need to support us and let us live here and continue to live here and not be priced out. And that's what this program would do. Okay. Now, I'm very happy that people brought up the impacts on renters. And there is, as Arden referred to, some things you could do, and it might take some time. But in 2024, something was passed by the legislation already. This is an informational guide about affordable housing property tax exemption. I'm going to pass this out.
Just leave it with Wayne, and you got it. Thank you.
So I've never participated in this program, but what I understand is under the 2.5% cap, right, you can exempt the taxes, part of it or on whole, for a property which is being rented affordably to a low, moderate income household. Okay. Now, that's going to take some time. You're not going to be able to do that today, but that's one thing you can do. But there is something that you can do right away within this fiscal year, and it's by the Affordable Housing Trust. Who is the Affordable Housing Trust? It's 9 members, 5 of them are on the select board. You are the majority of the Affordable Housing Trust. If you really are nervous, worried, concerned that current renters in town will be priced out because of this, you can allow those property owners some type of subsidy through the Affordable Housing Trust. The tenant would have to be income eligible, but there's no constraint on the rent being affordable. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of the most flexible ways to do that. I also want to respond, and I work in the field, and I hear this all the time, but second homes do get all the same services that I get as a resident. They get protection and access to the police, to the fire, to all of Town Hall's programs. And I'm sorry, but it's part of the social contract for us to support the educational system, whether you have children or not. That's just abhorrent to say that second homeowners shouldn't contribute to that. I'm sorry. And that's about it. And if, again, just like with the CDBG, if there's anything I can do to help with any part of this, if the trust wanted to start something like that, I offer my consulting services for free.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, anyone else?
Gosh, if my husband's watching this, he's going to kill me. My name is Julie Silver. I live at 46 Little Neck Lane. I'm a resident here, but I also have a single-family house that I rent out. I rent out annually. It's not a short-term rental, so I do not make $2,000 a week. I rent it to a young man who works full-time at the U.S. Coast Guard, and his rent is pretty much the same level that the Mass Voucher Program allows for a two-bedroom. So I appreciate Mary's comments that I really believe that landlords or people who own investment properties, I feel like there's no incentive for me to do that where I could be making a lot more money as a short-term rental. So I believe that there should be some benefit to people who rent out year-round for our infrastructure employees, providing that the rents they charge are considered, income eligible. And that's all I would ask you to consider.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Is there anyone else?
And then, no, there's no one else.
Motion
So
to
moved.
close the public hearing. Second.
Second.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So now that we have all this information, where would we like to go?
Madam Chair, I move that the town of Mashpee adopt a residential exemption at 20%.
I'm going
Second?
I have a first and a second. John?
Oh, it's discussion now, right?
It's discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, that, everybody that came here tonight, well done. And again, there wasn't many people that spoke up against it, which I was kind of surprised. There was a few, and again, well said on the other side of things. And it's almost, I can personally benefit from this vote,
We
which
hope
is kind of, it kind of bothers me, to tell you the truth. And, but I also, listening to everybody here in the public, I can understand, and Karen, to call you out, well done, because I think that breakdown, even though we got it on a different spreadsheet, but it kind of just repeated the facts, and it made it a little bit more clear even. So I am concerned, and I hope I'm not rambling, but,
You
we
are.
do have costs coming up down the road. And I do understand the idea is give the relief now. So I clearly said, I understand that. I also understand that, we have tax increases that are coming because it's things that we can't avoid. And it's a police station and wastewater and things like that. In my mind, if we slow this increase and this tax benefit to the community, we could use this at a time when that's going to hit the taxpayers at more severely, if you will. That being said, again, do the residents need it now? So I understand that. So that's what I'm saying, and if anybody else has, obviously it's comment.
I think I have to agree. You all did a very good job tonight. And I understand now that, looking at the table of what's in front of us, that it does make sense to go to the 20%, to to give the relief to the people that really need it right now, and I understand that. And the tax burden to the non-resident, I understand it more this time than ever before, to see the amounts written. The charts are very well done this year. I have to give you both credit for that. And yes.
I have just a comment on this 20%. The overlay surplus will need to be dealt with, because if we do hit that 1,500 or more applications, we don't have it right now. If you look at your potential shortfall.
Right.
Yeah, so we just don't have enough to meet it, likely.
Just speak louder into the mic, please.
It's a karaoke
Just
night,
repeat it.
so-
Yes, just repeat it.
Thanks.
The 20%, we're estimating that it's likely that the current overlay surplus is insufficient, the balance, so just to keep that in mind.
So if we did the 20% and 1,500 people sign up for it, that's $1,609,000, right? That,
Yeah, that's about 490
over.
short.
It's about
Sure.
500,000, we'd have a
Short.
$500,000 deficit.
okay. Rodney, our town manager?
The last time we did this, what did you recommend for the overlay? And a follow-up question, based on what you recommended, what did you use from that?
I know we added to the balance.
The first 2 years, I believe we used $800,000 as the annual allowance. And we now have.
And you
because of that-
projected,
Projected what?
the last time you
We didn't
projected?
drain it all, so we have that moving forward in the fiscal year.
We have $1.1 million
You currently have
surplus.
1.1, or if
Yeah.
you want to get precise, I think somebody said use the 9, so I'm going to go
That was me.
and say $1,129,527. Is that correct?
Currently, yeah,
Currently.
yeah.
So, if you don't mind, can I?
No, please do.
How much of that needs to be added to? And then in follow-up, like I said, out of what you projected the last time, how much did we actually use?
That's gonna be,
I'd have to,
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the detail. I mean, we put 800,000 in each of the last 2 years. And it's resulted in $1,000,001.
And if we do
Surplus.
1,500 people, it's going to cost $1,609,000, so we're short 500,000,
Roughly.
roughly.
potentially.
Roughly.
And what you're not mentioning is the allowance for next year, we're gonna have to increase that as well. The finance director is here. I don't know if she has anything to add.
Chair, may I?
Step on it.
So we could potentially have a $500,000 shortfall.
Shortfall.
Yes.
And if that's the case, could we go to, how would we rectify the problem? I mean, could we go to free cash, and when?
Did you see the number that we just certified?
Yes.
Right. We could use,
Well, I'm not saying that without a further discussion, but I'm not worried about it.
right, that's what I'm saying. So we could
Okay.
use free cash and rectify the problem.
So that way, that's where it comes from.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good. Okay.
Call for a vote.
I have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote. John, this is at 20%.
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Do we need anything else added? Oh, we need the motion.
Oh, and you know what?
I have it right here. You got it?
Well, yeah, no,
You
actually,
just forget it.
I actually want to re-motion because I did that under the end of the hearing, so if, 'cause I don't know if that was correct. I thought we should have done it out of the hearing.
Right.
So I move that the town of Mashpee adopt the factor of 1 for all classes of property with no discount for open space, no small commercial exemption.
Second.
Tom?
Yes.
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 And I'm a yes.
And David?
And David?
Yes.
Okay, no.
Just in case, that's all.
And now the motion for the residential.
Didn't we make that motion and vote on it?
Well, we have to say the motion, a resident, oh, okay.
No,
Okay,
yeah, I think we're covered now, right?
so we're all set?
Yeah. Just want to confirm that's before they leave.
You all set?
Yeah.
As far as the two motions,
Yeah, the first one was perfect.
Okay.
Straight, right on.
And we did the second one. And we
Couldn't have
just
said it better
voted on the
myself.
second. Okay, we're good.
so you have everything you need.
Thank you.
Did they vote the residential exemption? Did you motion the residential exemption?
Yes, we just voted on it.
Yes. We're good, right?
I was thinking about dinner, sorry.
You were
So am
thinking
I.
about dinner? Please, everybody, we have other business on our agenda. Please.
Not for us, though, right?
They're not staying for the calendar?
The only thing that I was going to recommend to the board is you've got 2 additional meetings. We don't need the second one. Is that correct? And the date of the second one you should have on your calendar.
Please, everybody, quiet. We have other business. Thank you.
My recommendation would be for the board to just modify the schedule to cancel the second meeting in November,
November 25th.
because you had back-to-back meetings in addition to this one. What I'm saying is, we don't need the second one. We'll just have one in December 2nd, we were going to suggest, if that was okay.
December 2nd.
So which one are you suggesting, December 2nd?
So canceling November 25th.
I'd like to make a motion
And
about
adding-
cancel.
Is it the 25th?
We got a motion on
This
the
is the
table.
25th.
Wait, hold
I'll
on.
second the motion.
I just want to make sure we got the right date.
Confirm the date.
I've got 2 dates here.
Okay, so we cancel the 25th
And add December 2nd,
and add December 2nd, and then we go to the 16th.
the 16th, canceling December 9th.
Yes.
So I need a
All right, so
motion
there's a
to
motion to
cancel November
cancel November 25th
and December
and
9th.
and December 9th,
Yes.
and to schedule a meeting on December
2nd.
2nd.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, John? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And Tom?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
adjourn.
Motion
No,
to
actually, do
approve
we have
the
to-
proposed meeting schedule as amended?
Second.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you, everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes,
Second.
Yes. Yes, motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Ay, ay, ay.
Carol, can you hold me for a sec?